It's time to talk about 14.7 full preview to see what exactly they're changing and to see if enemy next patch is going to be actually impactful in any way. Buffs. Galio, mainly buffing AP ratios here to skew to meat and power in the passive to back up the longer fight from last patch. Okay, so they're buffing damage, which I was wrong. I thought they're gonna buff utility, but they're buffing damage. This is great news. Karma, divorcing the power of R shield from E to encourage more supporter casts. Also increasing more of her utility outputs of W, which is expected to be more support skewed as it's easier to land than in mid lane. That's not necessarily true, but okay. Lux, buff to the AP to skew her more towards mid. Her support is in a reasonable spot, and while this benefits both role supports will become nerfed comparatively more by Zazak's nerf. Nasus, for one of the lowest master curve champions, he should be excelling in regular play, but he's not. These buffs are focused for enabling the late game drain tank fantasy and opening up the Q last hitting thresholds. Olaf, it's been a while since all of jungle has been viable. Increases to Q and W, which are more jungle skewed, are buffs to E when jungling. Okay. Smaller, we've drained a lot of power out of the burn and execute, so these changes are aimed at making him a bit more stable in early game. These changes are also biased towards making the warrior a bit more competitive on second slot over Sojourn. Overall, we're looking to go about halfway on his power level before. Salas, pretty straightforward jungle buff, not looking to make it primary role, but it's a role people like to play, so we'd like to support it. Nerfs, Fiora, pretty straightforward nerf here. She's been shown in the lead for a pretty long amount, and as a champion who's got reasonable mastery curve, I know some people don't think so. It seems reasonable that she shouldn't be solidly so far over 50. Rek'Sai top is to Shang. The way she wins is by ignoring opponent and spamming sustain on the waves or bringing that down. Well, okay, these are just really short and brief explanations. This is not necessarily true, right? Like, it says ignoring opponent, but it's more like she fights you and then disengages and then heals back up and fights you again and does the same pattern until you lose. Rel is only Shang for pros while simultaneously needing us to depress her win rate as a pro flex. She also holds very little play rate in jungle while doing some weird stuff with her jungle mods from the support role. Example is she's accidentally good at taking joggins when you're playing her support. Yep. Overall, these mods can be sustainable when it results in great outcomes for regular players, but when it results in depressed win rates for regular players while dominating the pro meta, this isn't positive. Similar to Blitzcrank, we're happy we did this experiment, but supporting her in one role is how we're going to maintain her moving forward. Thank God. I think this is good. I don't care about people complaining on Reddit about Ral, blah, 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 blah. This should have never been a jungler in the first place, but okay. Volibear. R results in a pretty deterministic low gameplay outcomes when played from the jungle role. Example, shows up on dive and person is dead. Nerfing the CD here as a result. Okay, so basically, this is very true. So what he's saying is that, okay, let me translate this sentence for you. Volibear is a brain-dead stat check champion that has very low counterplay and very low skill. The reason why they're nerfing R cooldown is because when Volibear jungle approaches you, in a lot of cases he uses R, and then usually champions take tower as a protection against stat checkers and divers, right? Because Volibear R removes tower from the occasion, he just basically kills you with no counterplay. And they're nerfing the CD of this spell so he doesn't do it as often. This is good. Volibear is a brain-dead stat check champion, and he should not be probably in a good state in League of Legends ever. In high elo, especially. Adjustments. Camille. Objective here is to move her from support Camille to top Camille, buffing Q rank ups and reducing the power from Emax. Bloodsong is also nerfed. Namisona. Changes here are to move power into support you, outputs and less into click your damage. Some of the damage creep here is coming from support items, so we're reducing those as well as supports that are just doing a bunch more damage than you'd expect them to. Yep, Nami is a really good offender of this. This is true. Alright, so the patch itself is probably not looking too good, but let's look at the changes that I haven't seen yesterday. So, first of all, Galio. Passive AP ratio up by 5%, so I believe this is a complete revert from last patch, right? W base damage reduction will go up by 5. This is also a revert from last patch, and E base damage goes up to the same up rank value as last patch. Okay, these are amazing Galio changes, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think he might actually now be buffed. I'm gonna try him out, and I think now, after these buffs, he might actually be the same as before, but better. We'll see. Karma. RE secondary shield will go 30% of E plus R into 90% of R. This is a 22% buff. Okay, so Karma will do 22% more shield when she does RE. Okay. Single target. And W duration 1.4 to 1.6 into 2. Okay. The first change I think is amazing. The second change I think is horrible. Okay. I am a big hater of this change. This is not good. This is a complete failure. First of all, they're saying that support karma casts more Ws. This could be slightly true. However, why the hell are we even buffing this spell in the first place? First of all, 1.4 is already a giga long duration for a rank 1 ability. Okay. Against any decent competent karma player, when she Ws you, she can easily land the Q after. Okay. This just gives even more time for you to play League of CC and not move. Okay. We shouldn't be buffing crowd control spells like this when they're already giga high. And League of Legends suffers already from League of CC when, you know, we only have like things like mercs in the game when you can't even buy them in so many cases. This, to me, is a complete fail. Kayn, Q bonus AD ratio, 0.8 to 0.85, and it obviously triggers twice because it's twice proc, right? Okay, so this change is not as bad. Because last patch they nerfed Kayn R, okay? And I thought this patch they would just buff up Kayn R by a little bit back. But I'm glad they went for this change instead. Why is this better, you might ask? Because Kayn R is a point and click, no counterplay ability. No skill. Brainless. Kayn Q can at least be flashed. You could maybe dash away from it. Maybe, you know, there is more counterplay to this ability. So this is not as bad. Lux, passive AP ratio up by 30%, up by 5%, Q AP ratio up by 5%. Okay, so these are really low Lux buffs, right? These are really low Lux buffs. But let me bring you back in time and show you guys that Lux has received actually more buffs than this in the past, okay? So 13.7, this patch, you can see that... So this patch, she got the first buff, right? So her passive got more base damage, her passive ratio went up to 25. Q cooldown went down by scaling, which is a million buff. And then E got damage reduced by 5, which is nothing. Then here, no, actually, this was the buff that I'm talking about, actually. This was like the first big Lux buff that happened some time ago. And then here she also got AP ratios increased 20% on R and E, I think this is 10%. These were the first Lux buff that made her much better. Now, these Lux buffs are really small. Like, here we're talking about 5% on passive and 5% on Q. So the passive buff is nice for good players because when you play Lux and you're a good player, you're gonna proc and space passives in way more in lane. These are obviously better buffs for mid lane because mid lane will get slightly more AP throughout the game, but these are also good buffs for support. The Q buff is also nice, but honestly, this doesn't really move Lux. Like 5%, like buffs need to be at least like 10 to 20% on AP in order for you to really feel an impact. Nasus passive lifesteal is gonna go up by 1 early level and then 3 later level, and then Q base damage is gonna go up by 10 flat early and 10 flat late. Yeah, I mean Nasus low elo good buffs, whatever, right? Like, yeah. This barely moves. This barely moves the champion. Yeah, I'm talking about 20% chat because she got 20% on R. And guess what? She's not like Omega passive because she got 20% on R. All of jungle. Okay, so Q monster damage will go 5 to 25. That's new. Okay, so they're giving him monster mod damage. W duration will go up by 1. This is also a top lane buff. W mana cost will go up by 20. Okay, so this is obviously a bigger nerf to top lane because in jungle you have infinite mana regen with your jungle item. E cooldown refund will go 2 seconds for monsters, so way more easy in jungle. And then R mana cost will go up. This also basically makes it so all of top lane obviously suffers more with mana. So I wouldn't be surprised if all of top lane doesn't really lose win rate here in high elo because like here's the thing, right? In a lot of times, all of top lane can now proxy lanes and then do jungle camps. Because basically, Riot has increased his jungle care here for top lane too. So when Olaf is ahead and he's proxying you, he can do jungle camps way easier. So, yeah, I don't know. There's a very slight chance that Olaf will be nerfed in the future for top lane. And I also think that there's a slight chance that Olaf gets another buff next patch or 2 patches from now on. Jungle, again, jungle monster mod going up because this is very little number here that they're giving IMO, even though Q is a pretty spammable spell. So then you have Smolder, 2 armor up and QA every crit ratio up. I think these are good buffs. Armor is an okay buff. Crit ratio is a good buff because you want Smolder to buy crit items. Smolder's fail this year is that he buys a lot of items that give him HP, so he becomes very tanky as an ADC, which should not be the case. These are good Smolder buffs, but they barely do anything. Like, this is probably better for low elo players, obviously. Sylas, Q Monster mod, I already commented on this yesterday, it doesn't do anything. Fiora, 5 AD, it's a really good nerf, I think. Rek'Sai. So, okay, Rek'Sai, I haven't seen this. Passive minion mod will go down by 30%. This is very good, okay? Rek'Sai top lane will now generate way less Fury again. Now, from my experiment playing into Rek'Sai, she gains a shit ton of Fury in top lane, so I'm assuming this will not be enough. I'm assuming. And then passive scaling, healing, like, not a big nerf. Not a big nerf. Rel jungle remove basically from game, but support will get a slight buff. I think this is good. Volibear Q crits for total AD ratio instead of a total ability damage. Okay, so people don't understand this, but this is a Sunder Sky nerf, okay? Because most of the time when Volibear goes on you, the first auto attack is always the Q, right? Because he Qs and then auto attacks you. When every Volibear playing jungle by Sunder Sky will lose a lot of damage here with this being changed. So this is actually a Volibear jungle Sunder Sky nerf. Our cooldown up by 20, very meaningful ability. You want this to be cast in a lot of skirmishes. This is going to hurt Volibear a lot in jungle. Volibear is slowly fading away from being like a really good champion and a lot of healers to actually being bad again. IMO. He's definitely moving into that direction. Camille, Q move speed will go up by 10 later on. So because you max this first on top lane, at level and you reach level 9 faster, it's a top lane buff more. Q cooldown down by 1, very huge because Camille Q is her primary damage ability, especially later in the game. This can be very impactful because it's a Cho'Gath ult. You're doing Cho'Gath ult just more often. W altered cone damage will go to 1% up max HP, this is fine. E damage will go down by 20. I mean, in top lane she doesn't use E as often as support, and Bloodsong nerf. I think Camille support will slowly die. Nami, I already commented on this, but basically slightly less damage for Nami, slightly more healing for Nami, right? E is also losing damage. This is good. Nami is definitely a big offender of doing too much damage as a support. Nuno doesn't do anything. Sona is the same. Sona will do less damage, but heal more. This is fine. Bloodsong, really glad this is getting nerfed. Imperial Mandate, another item that a lot of support champs like Nami are abusing, just gonna do less damage, fine. Static Shoe, one of the biggest changes of the patch is the Static Shoe. So yesterday, when I was doing patch preview, I said Static Shoe will either lose 100 or 200 gold, or they're going to nerf the stats. And it looks like I was correct. Let me just pick a champion. Okay, Static Shoe 200 gold decrease is a massive nerf to the item. Okay, it's no longer gonna be Giga OP. I wouldn't be surprised if it dies, actually. Like, completely. I wouldn't be surprised if this is enough of a nerf for it to die. Because Kraken is only 100 gold more expensive, and gives you a way better passive. Sure, the stats are a bit worse, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a heavy nerf to Jinx, a heavy nerf to Zari, especially. Like, yeah, this is a big nerf. This is going to nerf ADC quite heavily, the Static Ship users. Sivir as well. Zazak is going to get explosion damage flat 10 nerfed and 1% less of target's max HP, and the cooldown is going to be up. This is a massive nerf to Zazak. This is going to be a big nerf to mate supports, and that's the patch. Very small patch, guys, because most of these buffs are useless, most of these nerfs are useless, and most of these champ adjustments are pretty useless. The biggest changes are probably the system changes, Bloodsong and Static Shoe. That's the patch.